Hey guys, we are going to go ahead and look at the Q1 prompt from your timed writing in class today. We will go back over this tomorrow in order to plan out a line of reasoning together. We will go through all the sources in class and we'll talk about how you should have used them in conversation with each other. For today, I just wanted to make sure that we looked at the prompt and that we looked at the sources individually so that way you could have a clear idea of whether or not you used them correctly in class today, whether or not you answered the prompt, and whether or not the line of reasoning that you attempted to construct in class today was going to be sufficient to actually answer what the prompt for this Q1 was. So this is the 2010 Q1 prompt. Obviously it has the directions, it tells you the time frame, and then we have the introductory information. So much attention has been given lately to the ubiquitous presence of information technologies. Our daily lives seem to be saturated with television, computers, cell phones, personal assistant devices, and MP3 players, to name just a few of the most common technologies. So ubiquitous means pervasive. Just in case you guys didn't know. Many people extol, this means praise, the ability of such technologies to provide easy access to information and facilitate research and learning. At the same time, however, some critics worry that widespread use of information technologies forces our lives to move too quickly. We encounter images and information from the internet and other sources faster than we can process or evaluate them. Even though electronic communication has been enhanced, both the quality and the quantity of face-to-face interaction is changing. So notice in the background, they make it clear that we're going to be looking at the role of technology, and they make sure that they bring up some of the different functions that this technology has, that it allows us to access information, that it facilitates research. It also looks at how some people worry that it forces our lives to move too quickly, that we can encounter information faster than we can process it. But it also points out that our electronic communication has been enhanced, and the quality and quantity of our face-to-face interaction is changing. So we have a couple of, negative impacts from technology. We have a positive impact from technology, and then we have kind of a neutral impact. So this could be interpreted either way. It's neither positive or negative. It's just the amount and how we do it is changing. And remember, this was written in 2010, but obviously this has changed even more in the face of COVID and everyone using Zoom. So then we look at the prompt down here at the bottom. Read the following sources, including the introductory information, carefully. Then, in an essay that synthesizes at least 3 of the sources for support, evaluate the most important factors that a school should consider before using particular technologies in curriculum and instruction. Now, this is important because this prompt does not ask us whether or not the use of technologies in school is a good or bad thing. It does not ask us if we defend the use of technologies in school or if we are challenging the use of technologies in school. That is not actually the question that it is asking here. It is asking us to evaluate the most important factors that a school should consider before using particular technologies. So it's essentially asking us, what is our ranking? Of the most important factors. Now, that doesn't mean that in the process of answering this question and arguing what we think is the most important factor, that we won't come off as seeming to think technology is a positive or negative thing. You probably will ultimately seem as though you are defending or challenging the use of technology. And that's fine. But remember, that is not the actual question that you should be answering. You are looking at what is the most important factor. What this means is when it comes to your counterclaim, you are going to be engaging with someone who thinks the most important factor is different from the one that you have selected. it is very important for you to remember that this is what you're actually looking for, because when you go through the sources, you are not looking for ways to defend or challenge the use of technology. You're not looking for, this is a positive impact of technology, this is a negative impact of technology. You are looking for what factors should influence whether or not a school chooses to use technology or not, whether they choose to incorporate it into their curriculum and instruction or not. So if you misread the prompt, you will then misread all of the sources. And remember, the very first point that you get for the AP exam now is whether or not you have a clear thesis statement that answers the prompt. And so if you write a thesis statement and take a position of defend or challenge, you will not get the point for thesis because you are not actually answering the prompt. That also means that you probably have misevaluated the sources and you've probably misused the sources, and as you can see, it will snowball from there. You won't get the point for thesis, and it's going to negatively impact which of the 4 points you get for evidence and commentary. So we're going to look at the sources in the packet, and these are all of the notes that I actually took in class during the 15 minutes that we had to go over the readings. So the first thing I did was I flipped through all of the sources, and I immediately saw that source C was the longest of them, so I put it to the back because I knew that it was going to take me longer to get through it, and I wanted to make sure that I went through everything else first. And source E is a picture, so I flipped it to the front because it's going to be the quickest for me to go through. So I try and rank my sources from quickest and easiest to assess and read to what's going to take the longest. So this is a political cartoon. It's making commentary. Looks like it's making commentary on technology. And so in this picture, we are focusing on the fact that this little boy is isolated. He's in a room all alone. It's dark. There's no one else here with him. I mean, literally, like this whole side of the page is black. And the only light is coming from up here in this teeny tiny window. And if you notice, what's on the television is the same thing that you see in the window. And so I feel like this is making commentary on isolation and how technology, separates us and isolates us from other people. And it is focusing on the preference that we end up having for the simulated digital world instead of the real world. We could go outside and experience this, but instead we choose to sit and look at our phones, look at our computers, look at our TVs, and experience those things digitally and virtually. Now, this is not a paper where I need to defend or challenge whether or not we should use technology. Remember, first, I'm ranking what I think the most important factors are. And so the factor in discussion here is the role that technology is going to serve. That a school needs to consider if the use of technology is going to increase this isolation, this separation, or if it's going to increase the preference for a simulated or digital world. So I'm going to put real life experiences versus digital. Because the school doesn't want to, promote one of those over the other. The school doesn't want to promote digital experiences of the world in favor of real life experiences. But if, students don't have the opportunity to travel around the world or to go to museums, those are things that they can do through technology. And schools obviously don't want to promote isolation. Source A. It's from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, so it's a newspaper article, and it's talking about a book. Books are out. iBooks are in for students at Arizona High School. So as I skimmed through this, this article talked about how the school had no textbooks this year, that they had shunned the printed textbook, and that the school believed in electronic materials getting students more engaged in learning than paper materials, and that the school has a history of taking risks. that they've always been pretty aggressive in the use of technology. They also brought up that schools typically overlay computers onto their instruction, that it's like frosting on a cake, so that the technology isn't actually a vital part of the instruction. But this school is saying, no, like technology is vital to our instruction. We're not going to create activities or curriculum that students could just do on paper, except now they're typing it. Like, we're going to utilize these new and interesting ways that students can use technology. So, again, I'm not looking at whether or not we're defending or challenging technology here, but the factors that they bring up is that technology can allow students to be more engaged in learning, and they bring up the fact that technology is a key ingredient, that it is integral to 21st century learning, and that these are the factors that schools should consider. However, this source also shows me that they agree, that they understand that they are aggressive in their pursuit of technology and that they're taking a risk. And so one of the things that schools need to consider is, are they equipped to take that risk? Can they afford to take the risk? And it could be a risk of money, investment in the technology, but it could also be a risk in student achievement. So those are both important factors. Now, remember I told you, while technically you are not defending or challenging, depending on how you rank these different factors, that will probably naturally lend you to seeming as though you support or you don't support the use of technology. Obviously, if I'm making the argument that the most important factor is that schools should consider whether or not they can afford to take the risk, well then I'm going to bring up the fact that if they take the risk and they fail, that it's going to be a negative investment of taxpayer dollars, that it's going to negatively impact student achievement. I will appear to be supporting that side naturally by answering the actual question. I won't be starting the argument off by saying I defend or I challenge the use of technology in the classroom. So there is a difference there. Source B, Wall Street Journal, another newspaper article. So pioneering teachers are getting their classes to post assignments online so students can easily read and critique them. Students can practice foreign languages in electronic forms. Students can do scientific experiments on PDAs. They can use infrared gadgets to answer questions at the touch of a button. And that educators are beginning to interact with students, parents, and each other in ways that they never have before. So some of the key concepts brought up in this short little piece are that technology makes learning easier, that it provides new forms of communications and interaction for students and teachers and parents. Source D, I had a lot of information here. So this is an excerpt from a book. This is focusing on how technology transforms the way we create and communicate. So this author talks about how he couldn't imagine writing without a computer previously. That now it feels strange to write with a pen and paper. Now he actually has to think about the process of writing, like actually holding the pen and practicing time management and forming the letters, but he's not focusing on the quality of his writing. He's focusing on the physical process of writing when he goes back to using pen and paper. That things just flow better with a word processor, and that it's no longer a habit to write sort of analog style with pen and paper, and that in fact it's inferior technology. Writing an entire, the sort of contraption is well suited for jotting down a phone number, but not much beyond that. And so what he's focusing on here is that it actually requires less effort. It's more natural for people in the 21st century to use digital technology in the classroom, in their daily lives, than it is to use analog technology.